Alrighty, so I am here a little late, a few weeks late, but finally watched Twisters, and instead of doing Twister and then Twisters, I figured I would just combine them both because I honestly feel the same about both roughly, and it's going to basically just be honestly more negatives than positives, but I will start with a little context. So, Twister takes place in Oklahoma. I live in Oklahoma. I've dealt with tornadoes just about my whole life. And, it's interesting to see a movie about it because it truly is intense. When you see a tornado, there's something about it where it's not like a living thing. It's not a sentient evil thing. It's just nature. It just is. There's no motivation, there's no hate. It just exists. And I remember oh my God, the Moore tornado, the real bad one, I think in 2013, something like that. It was like my last year of high school, really bad. And when I used to live in Piedmont, Oklahoma, there was a tornado that came through, either during then, one of the times I was working at Dollar General and the power was out, but people were immediately coming in to buy supplies for just tornado victims and stuff. And so I think for people in Oklahoma, it's an interesting movie to see like how they do things right and blah blah blah. So I had never seen Twister, and so I watched it, I don't know, a month ago. I honestly had no idea what to expect. And right from the get go, because I like Bill Paxton as a actor. I don't really recall anything I've seen Helen Hunt in. She kind of reminds me of Jodie Foster, but the movie starts out and basically they used to be like a powerhouse couple that would go chase tornadoes, blah blah blah. But they're getting a divorce. He's already with someone else. And so he's just like, hey, I keep sending you the divorce papers. For the love of God, can you sign them? And you can tell, like, at least from the beginning, they hate each other. But then they're like, oh my God, there's something going on. And remember the old project we worked on? Just come with us one more time. And he's like, fine. And so he brings his new fiance with him, too. And, they get into a situation where a tornado's coming. Their car gets flipped and they're under like a little ditch bridge and somehow don't get sucked up by a tornado that picks up a car. Um, but you can tell from the beginning what they're doing is it's actually a love story and it's about them getting back together. The only problem is, and I don't know if this is just, an old fashioned thing, they are horrible people to each other. Like virtually the whole movie, they're constantly yelling at each other, getting in each other's faces, being nasty to each other. And then at random, finally, towards the end, he's like, I'm here because I love you. And then the radio, like his new fiance and everyone can hear, and he's like, I love you, blah, blah, blah. And then, they're real awkward, and you're like, what? Homie, you've been trying to get her to sign divorce papers. You got a new fiance, and you're telling me because you guys almost had a life or death situation, chasing tornadoes again, you're just magically in love again. It just, it was an eye roll, and I was just like, I don't buy this. I buy the CGI cow flying in a circle more than I buy that love story. Um, but yeah, I mean, great tornado effects, storm effects. I thought those were cool. The beginning was pretty shocking when it's the main girl, Helen Hunt, when she's a kid. It's her dad gets freaking sucked out of a tornado shelter into a tornado. I was like, wow, that's pretty brutal. And I thought all the effects were good because it's like 1997, I think, or something like that, 1998. I mean, I thought the effects looked pretty good, minus the Cal. Um, but I there's kind of, a fun aspect of that one guy. What would you know him from? In the show Psych, he's Despero. In Saw 1, he's Dr. Gordon. I think he was like Robin Hood or something. That guy. Um, he's like a rival tornado chaser, and so it's like he's the rich guy. He doesn't give a shit about weather, but he makes money, so he's like woo woo woo. Um, and they're always competing, and then he gets killed. It's actually pretty insane. Like they're driving through, the tornado's coming, and like a radio tower piece flies into the driver, kills the driver, impales him. Car goes flying and blows up. I was like, whoa, holy shit. Because, I mean, in real life, we had some storm chasers here in Oklahoma. They actually got killed. I think there was 3 of them. I can't remember their names, but it was pretty tragic. Like, they just got caught up in it, and it just crushed their car and killed them. And it was pretty traumatic. So, seeing that in the movie was like, damn. I think this was way after the movie happened, though. And then Philip Seymour Hoffman's in the movie also as like a kind of creepy perv in a way, kind of. Just gives me creepy, like your creepy homie that you don't really want around your girlfriend kind of vibe. But yeah, you know, it's all right. I was honestly let down. Just because you live in Oklahoma, you don't have to glaze a movie because it takes place in Oklahoma. And, I think something that's tough with a subject like this is like a movie, about 9/11 or war. You're going to have a lot of people who live here who've been affected personally. They've lost family members to tornadoes and just really tragic stuff. And, I guess you could say they don't have to watch it, but I'm sure it affects them where it's like a Hollywood version of such a horrible thing. But you could say the same thing about, like war movies, where it's like a Hollywood glam of a war movie or Afghanistan, so take that however you will. I just thought it was kind of a boring movie. Um, and yeah, I mean, Bill Paxton's fine. Helen Hunt's fine, but they're forced weird. The messaging is really weird because it's like, oh, you fucking hate your wife. Your wife hates you. You've basically been trying to get her to sign divorce papers for months. You're already moved on. Oh, you guys did one thing that you guys loved doing back in the day. And magically, now you're in love. You're totally not going to divorce a year after this. But yeah. But on to Twisters. I was only hyped for Twisters because, again, I live in Oklahoma. And then they have this badass song called Ain't No Love in Oklahoma by, I think, Luke Combs or something. It's pretty fire. When I saw it was going to be in the movie, I was like, okay, this will be cool. It's in the movie for like 5 seconds and you can barely hear it. I was so mad. I'm like, this should have been like an ending song where, you're driving into a tornado, whatever, and it's blasting that song. But no. There are a couple more songs that mention Oklahoma, but I've never heard of the singer or anything. They kind of do like an on the nose thing, like whatever the scene is, it'll kind of be like whatever this scene, but in Oklahoma. But Twisters, I think it takes place, modern time. There's like no references to Twister in Twisters. The only reference I can think of is at the very beginning they're trying to use Dorothy 5, which in Twister it's Dorothy 4. So they have Dorothy 5, but they don't really say like what's the connection there. Not that it has to be cameo filled or anything, but I was kind of thinking like, are we about to see like one of the characters? Nothing, or even a mention? There's no mention of them. Also, I'm yawning because I didn't sleep good. I just got done working out. I took a shower and I am just so tired. But it starts out horrifically, where it's like a bunch of college kids are trying to experiment where they're like, we might be able to dissolve and stop a tornado if we launch these chemicals into it. So, basically it's like this girl, her boyfriend, and her like friends in a car, and then the other friend is like a mile or two away, um, like kind of taking in the data. So they're driving. They realize they've messed up, but it's too late. And it turns out instead of it being just like an EF1 or whatever, like they thought it'd be, it's like an EF5 tornado. So they're about to get killed. They get out of their car. There's an overpass, whatever, and they're like, they stop to look at the camera and go, "Did you know you're not supposed to do this?" Ugh. And they run under, which is weird because side note, um, when I've seen those in Oklahoma, because I've seen people sleeping there, and there's areas where it looks like a cubby, and I kept thinking, oh, they're gonna get into like that cubby part and live, because all around Oklahoma City I've seen people in those cubbies, but no, there's like no cubby, and like one kid is just running and he's like, and gets sucked in, and then weirdly they have the girl who plays Sabrina the Teenage Witch from the new series. She was also the crazy girl from Longlegs. She's just randomly in the movie, but I remember being like, I don't remember her from the trailer. And yeah, she's like, they're like climbing up. She's like, help me. And a piece of wood just boom, body slams her. Boop, she's dead. And then it's just the girl and her boyfriend. And he's basically grabbing her from the top. And he's like, let's hold on. And then he just gets boop. Flung off, dies. And she's holding on. My only problem with that scene is it does, like, you're showing me a car being lifted and fly. You're showing me her other friends getting lifted immediately and flinging. And then she barely looks like she's holding on. Like, it doesn't look believable. She's just like... And then it just does like a tornado filter over her. I just kept thinking, you could have just done it where she's holding on, her legs are flying, and she's like... Urgh. Maybe even like, rip your like skin a little bit, because as far as I'm aware from what I've seen a little bit about tornadoes, like if it's strong enough like that, it'll like rip your clothes off, and I think might even like pull your skin. And obviously there's debris everywhere, so it'd be like cutting you up. But not that it has to be a rated R, tornado gore fest. But I was curious because they were already killing everyone off and being so like intense about it. I was like, eh. But yeah, so then it says 5 years later, she moved away to New York and just looks at weather data, and then her buddy who lived, which is the guy from Transformers: Rise of the Beast. I don't remember his name in the Twisters, so I'm just gonna call him Noah because that was his name in Transformers. But basically, the main girl, is like, I'm not going back. I have PTSD. But then her buddy Noah is like, oh my god, like come back, there's been a lot of weird storms in Oklahoma lately. Like I need you, because something that they introduced in this movie, basically magic, is this girl has basically the sixth sense, like clairvoyant for weather, especially tornadoes, where like MIT scientists, everyone is stupid. They don't know how to read tornadoes, but she can. Everything, she's just like, did you see how the wheat fields moved? And did you smell the air? It basically reminds me of a lot of people here in this state, annoyingly enough, who will sit there and be like, listen here, you're not a real Okie if you don't go on your porch, and I can just sense the EF5 coming. Oh, maybe that's an EF4. You ain't a real Okie if you can't do that. Just shit like that, where I was like, okay. But they make it so insane, her ability to do that, where I was like, is there magic in this movie? Is she a wizard? But she comes back to Oklahoma and is like, I'm giving you 1 week and I'll help you. And what's weird kind of about this movie coming out this year is that tornadoes were freaking crazy this year in Oklahoma. Even where I lived, there was a situation that happened where they were looking at the tornadoes and they were like, okay, you're fine. So we were, my wife and I, like, we got all the cats out, like it was all chill. And then boom, at random, the tornado sirens go off. And I'm like, wait, what's happening? And then we turn on the news and then they're like, oh shit, we fucked up. There's actually a tornado heading right where you live. And so we were like, oh my God. So we get in and it was, a block away. And, we're in the laundry room and it's just, hard rain and hail hitting. And then it kind of stops, but then you feel this vibration, this rumbling. And it was maybe for 45 seconds to a minute. And it was just, I was like, oh God, that's actually the tornado. And it went by, and I think like 3 blocks over, it flung a car through a building. I was just like, bro, are you serious? You telling me you couldn't predict that? Because, that's kind of what happens in this movie. Is like the weather people can't predict it, but then she's like, like using Cerebro to find out where a tornado is. But her buddy now, Noah or whatever the hell his name is, works for a like company getting data on tornadoes, and he's like, I've got this thing where we deploy 3 radars around a tornado like a triangle and get data. And so, like a dumbass, he does that with a tornado. Tells her to go outside while the tornado's like 100 feet away. And he's like, help me with this. We got to put the last radar in the ground. And, she has a panic attack. And then he gets all fucking pissy. I'm like, what the fuck were you thinking? Duh. She witnessed 3 of her friends get murdered by a tornado, killed, and her boyfriend got killed. Like, what did you think was going to happen? But then, they introduce Glenn Powell. I got nothing against the guy, but I just find it kind of weird, man, in the movie. Like, he's like 36 in real life. I think this girl's like 25, 26. And she looked noticeably young, and I feel like he looks more like 38, 39. But, he's like kind of like an asshole YouTuber who chases storms for views and, just acts like an annoying fuck. And at one point, when they're driving through to get to the tornado, he like shows up out of nowhere, tries to ram them off the road where they almost crash. And he's like laughing about it. I'm like, bro, that's like attempted murder. Like, there was all this road that you could have taken, but instead you purposely almost rammed into them and ran them off the road. I was like, no, I'd be pissed off too. But what's weird is they almost try to like set up kind of like what the first movie did, which is where it's like 2 competitors. But this is completely different. In this movie, one guy just wants tornado data. Another guy just wants to film tornadoes for YouTube views. And so I was like, what's the tension here in the drama? You can both go and do your completely different objectives. So there was like very, very like, like you're failing at trying to create, a clash. But of course, Glenn Powell drives a Dodge Ram with firework launchers and drills to drill into the ground so his car doesn't fly off, which I don't know how legal that'd be, because I do know here in Oklahoma we do have those like tank weather cars, and I think they do that or something close to that. Because his ass drives into a tornado and shoots fireworks off and is like, woo, YouTube clicks. I was like, what? But yeah, he's got 2 drills. They don't look that long, and so it's kind of shocking to me how well they work, because he goes through like an EF4 tornado and doesn't get sucked up, and the windows don't break out. There's nothing. I was like, no way, no way. I mean, I hate to be that guy, but I'm just like, bro, what are you using, ballistic windows or like what? Um, I just thought it'd be, you know, maybe four of those drills, or it'd be two drills that are, like maybe it might look like two poles coming out, but it's like 6 foot long drills, because the drills only look like they're like 2 feet long, and then he's drilling into like dirt. And I don't know, from my personal experience, a lot of like people's dirt and shit around here sucks. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of like the tension. But then you start slowly finding out, and of course, they have to kind of make the friend the bad guy, so she falls for old Glenn Powell. But basically, you find out the friend works for a company owned by a comically evil Oklahoman cowboy who basically gets the data from the guy and his team to then look at houses to buy. Like, he projects where the tornadoes will hit, and then that guy can like pre-plan like how, land to buy and people, where he's gonna be like, your house got destroyed, you don't have insurance, I'll offer you, I'm gonna lowball you, so you can get back up on your feet, which sucks ass. And I'm sure that happens here. I would not doubt it one bit. And so, the main girl, she's getting all angry because Glenn Powell's like, your freaking friend does that. And then she's like, oh, well, you're the one selling your merch to tornado victims. And then he's like, eh. And then comically, 10 seconds later, one of his crew members is like, you want food? Blah, blah, blah. She's like, no, I'm good. And she's like, yeah, like all that merch we sell is so that we can give free food to tornado victims. And she's like, oh, he's a sweetheart. Even though I'd have to rewatch it again, but it looked like they set up the merch table where the tornado destroyed the neighborhood. I'd have to rewatch it, but for a second I was like, no way, no way. I need to rewind it. But they also do like a weird thing where, like in the first movie in Twister, his like ex-wife's aunt, her house gets destroyed by a tornado, but then they show up and they try to help her. And there's a cool scene of them like going in the house trying to help her before the house collapses. They kind of try to do that in Twisters, but it's more of, they have this like I wouldn't say moral high ground, but they keep going, we need to go into that place, that town, and save everybody. And I kept thinking, what the fuck are you gonna do? There's 3 of you. And I mean, that's good that you want to be a hero, but I would almost want to see what like a police officer and fire department thinks about it, where you're already trying to get people out and make sure people are safe, and then a bunch of people show up and they're like, no, I want to, maybe not a bunch, but a handful of people show up and they're like, no, we're going to start climbing these like destroyed houses and help. And it's like, I want you to help, but I don't want you to risk hurting yourself either without the proper gear. And I just felt like it didn't really go anywhere. Like I said, the first one had it where it's like the aunt's house and blah, blah, blah. This one, it really was just to get to the point that Glenn Powell's Mr. Perfect angel, and then the friend's an asshole. And then it gets to, funny enough, a rodeo scene, which was filmed not far from my house, like not far at all. And I remember driving, at first, I didn't know what they were doing because they closed off the whole damn street. I was like, I got to go down the street. Like, I take that road. And I kept seeing a bunch of lights. I'm like, what is going on? And that's when I found out they were filming. So, everyone's just standing nearby by the police cars like, ooh. And then the next morning when I drove by, it was already the destroyed daytime scene. I was like, damn, okay. Which is funny because they filmed that rodeo scene in a really not good spot of town. Like, I mean, it's a night and day difference, but where they filmed it, that rodeo scene, not a good part of town. Kind of shocking that they filmed it there. But yeah, and then they're at a rodeo, they're talking, she's instantly smitten by his ass, and then a tornado comes, and then the weirdest thing happens where, well, two things. They're like the only people telling people to go inside and seek shelter, but there is no shelter. But comically, they go into like a motel lobby, and there are these two people who are like, just because the sirens are going off doesn't mean there's a tornado. There's like never a tornado, and it's funny because I'm partially like that, but after this year, I've grown to not be like that really, because we had a lot of close calls where I lived, and I kind of had to sit back and be like, okay, I need to not be so ha about it. Like, it's actually not a funny thing, it's like a pretty serious situation, but it was funny to see that in the movie. But they're running outside as the tornado's coming. And then the girl looks at the pool, and I don't recall there being like a repair sign or anything. Even if there was, it doesn't make sense. She's like, everyone in the pool now. And I kept going, why would you go to the pool? You're going to get sucked out. But they go into the pool, and there's a ginormous slab taken out of the pool, which like goes like 7 feet in. Like here's the pool. Like one of the walls is completely removed, where you could like walk inside of like underneath the pavement, and there's a bunch of pipes. So they all just go in there and grab onto the pipes, and I was like, how did you even know that was there? All you said is, let's go into the pool. But yeah, they hold on to the pipes, even though right behind them is a car being sucked up into the air. I'm like, bro, your arms would be broken. I would have tried to slip into the other side of the pipes so that it's the pipes me, but it's pushing me this way. I don't know. God, I mean, I guess you got to do what you got to do, but it made no sense to me how she was like, clairvoyant to be like, there's an exposed slab with pipes down there. Go! And then, she's kind of like yelling at her friend, like, you sell data, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, what is it? She says something like, you don't know what it's like to suffer like the people who lost their houses that the guy you work for is trying to buy. And he is like, oh, I haven't suffered. It was your fucking project that got my friends killed. And you're like, oh, shit. So she storms off, and you're like, ooh, unresolved trauma. And then she goes back home, which it's like she has no dad. It's just her mom living on a nice ass house and a nice land, with like a nice barn and everything. I was like, oh damn, was she one of them rich kids in the countryside? But the weirdest thing happens where Glenn Powell just shows up, just walks in. Mind you, he doesn't know where she lives. Because my wife was like, oh, maybe he knows where, like, she said something. No, she doesn't seem surprised, and she just goes, how'd you know where I live? I'm like, I don't give a fuck who it is. You're not going to just walk into my house and then me go, how did you get in? How did you actually find where I live? Oh, silly you. No, I'd be like, hey, get the fuck out of my house. What are you doing here? Man I met 2 days ago? What the fuck? And, they're just playing it up, and then the mom comes in, doesn't care, and is like, he's staying the night, and I'm cooking both of you dinner. I was like, I think most moms would actually be like, hey, strange man who looks 10 years older than my daughter, how about you fucking leave? And, my wife made such a funny joke. She was like, maybe that's why they don't have a dad in the movie, because that dad would basically grab his fucking shotgun and be like, get out of my house or I'm shooting you. Because, like, everybody in Oklahoma has a gun. But it's just so funny that they did that. And then, more chemistry, and, they're working on a project together. And then basically leads to the culmination of there's a tornado coming to El Reno. And first it turns into a fire tornado, and then it's going into a regular tornado, heading towards El Reno. And there's this, again, another weird part where they're like, we are responsible for the town of El Reno. We need to go in there and help the people of El Reno. And then the people of El Reno, which, mind you, I forgot what the place is called, but in El Reno, Oklahoma, there is a bomb-ass burger place. I wish I could remember the name. I'll remember next time. But it's like comically like there's like a parade market festival going on in El Reno, and the tornadoes come in. They're like, what? Which all I can say is, for the most part, we know about tornado chances like a week in advance, so I just don't see that happening. They usually always cancel events when there's like everyone on the news here in Oklahoma is saying that there's going to be a possibility of a tornado. So that was funny. But then, yeah, like the main characters show up, and the friend is driving with his buddy, and he's like, I don't want to chase the data. I got to go to El Reno and save those people too. And you're like, what are you going to do? And they show up, and it's like the entire town of El Reno is stupid and doesn't know what to do. And then Glenn Powell and the main girl like, everyone, go here, go to the theater. I'm like, you've never even established that you guys even know what El Reno is? And somehow you're more knowledgeable than the town of El Reno. Okay. And then they're like, everyone go to the old theater. Which, I haven't been to El Reno in a while, but I was like, there's nowhere else to go? No storm shelters or anything? Which, that is a problem here in Oklahoma. We don't have like mass public tornado shelters or anything, so you're fucked. And then every year when people get killed by a tornado, they go, thoughts and prayers. And then, whoopsie. But yeah, they're like all in the theater. And then the tornado's coming. I mean, it's just destroying the town. And, Glenn Powell and the main girl basically had figured out how to use the chemicals right. So she takes the car, drives into that tornado, launches that shit. Her car gets launched as well. And then the theater wall gets breached. And people are, getting just sucked up left and right. It's crazy. And then you see that it worked. The chemicals dissipate the tornado. Days saved. Then it basically cuts to, they're at Will Rogers Airport. Cameo. She's going back to New York. And then, the friend's like, goodbye. It was nice seeing you. And then she just doesn't say bye to Glenn Powell. And then there's a valet guy or like a check-in guard who's like, please move your car. And he's like, he sees the girl leaving, and Glenn Powell, he does drills his car into the street, which I'm like, oh, you're getting arrested for that. Runs out of the car, goes in the airport. They start making out. And I was like, I just don't believe it. I just don't. I really don't. And I just kept thinking, what was the point? Because you would think they would either just go real crazy with it because they already kind of introduced she has like magic powers. But they didn't really go too crazy with it, like A Day After Tomorrow or Into the Storm, something. It was all right. My wife said she'd watch it again. I don't give a shit to watch this movie again. And I hate sounding so negative, but the first one is just a stupid story about two people who clearly shouldn't be together. But the movie is like, no, like, yeah. And this one is like, yeah, like, we got to make your friend a bad guy because he has a crush on you and you don't like him. So you're going to like the guy that's weirdly, creepily, kind of stalking you, finds out where you live, just shows up inside your house. But it's all funny, runs you off the road. Just didn't care. I think a lot of people here are glazing this movie to death. And the reason why it took me so long to watch it is I kept trying to get tickets and it would be sold out every weekend. I was like, wow, people here are really eating this shit up. But yeah, I guess that's it for this. But again, I contemplated even making this video because I disliked both movies. I didn't care for them at all. Great, great VFX. I can't dog on that. Especially in Twisters, the tornado looked real beyond belief. But besides that, eh. And the main girl, who's clearly British, trying to do a ridiculous Southern grandma accent, does not work. So that's going to be it for me. As always, I'm out, and I've got videos planned. A lot of movies and stuff came out recently, so I was really pumping those videos out. But it'll probably go back to more like the 2 videos a week kind of thing. So thank you for watching. I'm out.